It is my absolute pleasure to be here today with Reverend Sekou, pastor of the Valley and Mountain United Methodist Church in Seattle, Washington, and my brother all the way from Malawi, the Reverend Canon McDonald Sambaraka, an Anglican priest coming to us from Malawi. Let me start with you, Reverend Sekou. What is the role of the U.S. evangelical Christian right in driving policies that impact the lives of Black people living in America?
I mean, well, I think so. It happens in the U.S. It happened in the USA recently around the evangelical support of Donald Trump, and the way in which Christians in the U.S. tend to be more white than Christian.
Yes.
The way in which they leverage their whiteness, and that the Christianity becomes a way in which to justify a performance of white supremacy. Those states all rejected health expansion, Medicaid expansion, because they hate poor people. They love fetuses. So I think that's continent we see, because those same forces, so Steve Bannon, who right winger in the White House, ran a really conservative news site. He's a special advisor to President Trump. Now he's in Africa doing advice to African politicians, and he's a Nazi. And I don't mean this abstractly. Mm-hmm. He's a bona fide Nazi. And white supremacist, he's in Africa under the guise of Christian discourse, and that you can trace every major legislation of anti-gay legislation in Africa to right-wing Christians in the U.S. And it's the same people. I just want to know
who has kind of begun to construct that analysis. But please take the baton. How does the U.S. evangelical Christian right impact the lived realities of many Africans in many African nations?
So all of a sudden, I can actually relate to what Reverend Sekou just alluded to, because what happens in the U.S., the level of influence that we've seen from the right to governments like the Donald Trump government, and the politics of the countries is what we see in Africa today. Suddenly, there are so many institutions supported by the right that are aiding processes of legal reforms in Africa. There are a number of organizations that are basically you can connect them to the extreme right. Actually, the level of damage, if you ask me, that is emanating from the engagement of the right in from that end, from the U.S. side of view to Malawi, is really unsettling, because it just brings the element that which is African is not supposed to be respected. The level of arrogance, the level of undoing of things, and the level of imperialism really defeats the whole dynamic that people come in the guise of preaching the gospel. Because for me, growing up in Africa, even before the church came to Africa, we were used to be a community. And our sense of community is a community where everybody is included. You don't exclude. If there is anybody you feel is going beyond the boundaries, the community itself could embrace that person and make appropriate amends. But what I'm seeing is exactly what Reverend Sekou alluded to. There is a deliberate creation of an elite that is Western trained, with a lot of indoctrination, or possibly trained in Africa by institutions set up by the right, with their own professors, their own people whom they have educated elsewhere, to create a pool of people who would undo anything African. That, to me, is a certain level of arrogance that is not what I would expect from what I would call a religious leader, or a clergyman, or a pastor. And the whole dynamic is of demonization comes into play. Anything African is demonic, is evil, is archaic, is not, does not fit in the scope of being considered as worthwhile. And then there is recently, actually, when Reverend Sekou was talking, I've seen recently the coming in of missionary groups of the evangelical side of the religious divide, setting up business groups. Mm-hmm. They are setting up business groups in the US, coming to start mining. Recently, there's been a team that has come to Malawi, but they have mines elsewhere. And why are they doing this? My sense is they want to entrench themselves in our countries and then facilitate this colonization of the mind, colonization of the economies. They are capitalizing on the scale of economy currently, economies in our parts, and perhaps what they call underdevelopment, and in the guise of bringing in development and resources. But by and large, they are undoing what our society has always respected as a people. They are also undoing what value systems we were always sitting as respecting as communities and societies, and bringing in a certain level of corrupting of our own societies. And this, to me, is I can see a lot of coming back to the aspect of white supremacy, because most of the evangelical movement that is coming, the evangelical right that is coming to Malawi and other African countries, as a certain elite of a certain community. That does not even, sometimes I sit and laugh to say, with pity, I laugh with pity to say, do these people understand what we are as African people? Do they appreciate our value system? Do they know that a child in an African setup is not born to a nucleus family? A child is born to the whole village. Yes. And so this child, whether he comes to be whatever he becomes, belongs to that community. But with this kind of bordering, with this kind of decolonization, I can see that the religious right is actually dismantling that subconsciously for us on the African setup, on the African continent, without necessarily realizing how much damage they are doing, and then sugarcoating that with scriptures and all that. And so the questions that Reverend Sekou was raising, issues of abortion, issues of LGBTIQ+, are dominating our discourse. And yet these were not issues. In my setup, these were not issues. We could see anybody wearing a lady's attire. That one, we could joke about it as a community, but today you see those are becoming issues and issues that they are advancing issues of criminalization, sponsoring the faith community in our part of the world.
Reverend Sekou, let me give you an opportunity to just talk directly to your brother, Reverend McDonald. And I just love to hear you kind of ask a question or give a statement regarding the need for solidarity between Africans on the continent of Africa and those of us in the diaspora, considering the issues that both of you have lifted up here today.
And so I'll begin with the tradition of Pan-Africanism. We begin with the great W.E.B. Du Bois at the Second Pan-Africanist Congress, and Amy Cesar, the work of Amir Baraka and Maya Angelou. Martin Luther King attends Kwame Nkrumah's inauguration in 1960.
Yeah.
There's a tradition of black folks through the Pan-African Congresses and through cultural exchanges of trying to make some sense of the way in which, because African people can be divided at one level in terms of which boat we got on and got off, and whose land was taken, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's all the same creature, that whether it be the slave ships or the Windrush going to the UK, right? So it's the same people who've exploited us, and that and because they have a united front, it looked like to me would just make sense that we would have a united front at a real basic level. And so the tradition of Pan-Africanism, in fact, my name is Osagyefo Uhuru Sekou. The tradition of Pan-Africanism, when I think of Julius Nyerere giving refuge to members of the Black Panther Party in the 1960s. And so then that we have that practice. But I also think that part of sharing the information is two things. One, a benefit is for African Americans to say to folk on the continent in this particular moment, this is what they've been doing to us.
Yes.
Plan on doing it to you.
Yes.
And they ain't your friends.
Yes.
Right. Because these are our white folks.
Mm.
We know our white folks. We know our white folks better than you, right? Now, you know the white folk over there better than we do. But we know our white folks. And we telling you, you can mess around if you want to, and you're going to lose everything under your land. Because that's what they coming for. So that's one.
Yeah.
Two, I think it's the best. The continent can remind us of the piece of ourselves that they attempted to suppress. I think one of the things that just like, for the lack of a better word, broke my heart, Reverend Cannon, is when you describe the way in which the imposition of the Western nuclear family on the African village ultimately undermines the very community that people are claiming to try to protect from gay folk.
Yeah, that's
like to me that is like you know what I mean? That do something to my spirit.
First, your response to, will it work for African Americans to expose who they are in terms of Africans seeing the light? And what is it that you can teach us regarding what they stole from us?
Thank you so much for those two. What this entails is we've seen these things working. One, when South Africa was fighting against apartheid, when there was a bloc of African Americans, our Black brothers and sisters in the US, who woke up and said, let's work against apartheid jointly with the South African brothers and sisters. And that helped to name and shame. That helped also for people to demonstrate against white domination and white arrogance. because the people in the US, our brothers and sisters in the US, know who these people are and what their capability and their potential weaknesses are too. And while here we receive on our part, we receive anything that comes because we don't know who they are, where they are coming from, and what they do. Then we receive them, we welcome them, and we are busy sleeping. They are busy taking whatever they can take away from us, and so a stringent an initiative of cross collaboration becomes very pivotal.